Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bina and I am a nutritionist here for the Virtual Smart Living Initiative at the Department of Aging. And we have over here Elisa Dinzes, who is helping to moderate this cooking demo. So thank you, Elisa. And this event has been brought to you by the ACL Grants Virtual Smart Living Initiative in partnership with the New York City Department for the Aging. So today's recipe is butternut squash with black beans. And I'm really excited to make this recipe with you because winter squash, such as butternut squash, is in season. So this is a really great dish to be making for the holidays or really for any day. And we're going to be learning about how to peel and cut a butternut squash and how to cook it into this dish. And we'll also learn about some of the nutritional benefits of this dish. So if you have any questions during the recording, you can feel free to submit them through the chat. Okay, great. And now we're ready to remove the flyer. And you should be able to see just me and my kitchen screen on Spotlight. If you are unable to see both of those screens, then you should just let us know through the chat, but you should be able to see both me and my cutting board. Okay, so we're gonna start off by, over here we have one butternut squash, and this recipe calls for using half of it. And you're gonna wanna start off by having already washed the skin of it. And also just make sure that before you start preparing any dish, always a good idea to wash your hands for 20 seconds in warm water and with soap. So because I already did that, we're ready to get started. And with the butternut squash, you'll want to have a good knife in order to be able to cut it, because when it comes to winter squashes, they have a very thick type of skin. So they're not as easy to cut into. So that's why you're going to want to make sure you have a good knife, such as like a chef's knife, but just always be careful when we're cutting. So first, we're going to be cutting off of the ends of it first. And you'll also want to make sure to have like a firm type of cutting board because since you're applying a lot of pressure with the knife, you don't want anything to be slipping underneath you. Okay. So here we have one side of it cut, and let's flip over to the other side and we're going to cut this as well. Okay.
I love butternut squash. Yeah. You don't like it? I mean, really?
My husband loves it.
If you don't mind just muting yourselves for the duration of the recording, and then afterwards we're happy to hear your voices for any questions or comments. Okay, so now over here.
Can't see the board.
Oh, you can't see the board?
No.
You should be able to, both me and my board are spotlighted. So
I could see them, Bina.
Okay, yeah, maybe you just have to like change your screen or the viewing options.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
over here we have this butternut squash. We have this is the neck and this is the bulb, and because we're only going to be using half of it, we could just cut into half of it, and then we're going to peel off the skin. So again, you want to make sure that you're using a strong type of knife, and you have a firm cutting board underneath you that doesn't slip. Okay. And then we're ready to start peeling it. Okay. This is what we have.
Yo amigo ya.
It sounds like there's some type of echo. Oh, okay, great, thank you. So you could use a knife or you could use a peeler to get the skin off of it. You're gonna wanna, I'm gonna be using this peeler over here, and it's great to have some type of sharp peeler in order to get the skin off, because as we said before, the skin is really thick. So over here, we're gonna get the skin off. And as you'll, if you're able to see, there's also these like green streaks of on the butternut squash, and we're gonna wanna get rid of all of that so that we're just left with the orange flesh of it. So as I'm peeling this, I do wanna mention some of the health benefits of butternut squash. Butternut squash is a great source of something called beta carotene. And if you attended our cooking demo that we had maybe like 2 months ago, where we learned how to prepare pumpkin pie overnight oats, you'll remember that pumpkin is also a great source of this nutrient, beta carotene. And beta carotene is something that when we consume it, our bodies turn it into vitamin A. And vitamin A is great for our immunity, for keeping our skin healthy, and also for healthy vision. Butternut squash is also a great source of potassium. So potassium, in addition to lowering our intake of sodium, is great for having healthy blood pressure. So now you should be able to see that I removed the skin, but there's still like some green streaks throughout. So we're gonna wanna get rid of that as well. Okay, so we're gonna continue peeling this. And some other benefits of nutritional benefits of this recipe is the fiber. The black beans, which is also one of the main ingredients of this recipe, both of them, both the black beans and the butternut squash, are great sources of fiber, which is really important for us because it helps us to stay regular, and it also helps to, having enough fiber could help lower our risk of getting type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So even just one serving of this recipe, which is about 1/3 of this recipe, provides 14 grams of fiber, which is a lot. Okay. All right. So we pretty much at this point removed most of those green streaks, and now we're ready to cut this up into small cubes. So in order to make it a little, I'm just going to give this, I'm going to put this aside. In order to make it a little bit easier to cut into this, you might want to start off with cutting it into, actually, sorry, we're first going to cut it lengthwise, and then we're going to cut it into pieces. Okay. And you might want to just test the different knives that you have to see which ones are the best type to use. Okay. Okay, and if you were using the bulb, then that actually has seeds in there. So the seeds are not something that you should throw out, because the seeds are a great source of protein and healthy fat. So you can definitely keep those seeds and then just roast them. And that could make a great snack. Okay. Let's try to see if this is ready. Open this up. Okay, so here we have it cut in half, and now this is going to be a lot easier to cut into. Okay, so now I'm switching over to a different knife, and we're going to just cut this into pieces, small cubes to cook in this recipe. So we were talking before about the nutritional benefits of this recipe. And another thing that this recipe is really rich in is protein. One serving of this recipe has about 13 grams of protein. And the protein comes from primarily the beans. So protein, as you may know, is a really important nutrient, especially for older adults. The reason why it's so important for older adults is because as people age, they could be gradually losing muscle. So it's really important to make sure we're getting enough protein from the foods that we eat so that we can stay independent, and it'll help us to improve our ability to do things, and to help protect our muscles is a reason why we want to make sure to be getting in enough protein. So we're going to just finish cutting this up over here. And you do want to try to get these pieces to be somewhat like even, so that way it'll cook better when the sizes are about the same. Okay. And one thing I should mention is that if you do have a microwave at home, you'll have a lot of an easier time peeling the butternut squash. So what you'll want to do is for about like 1 to 2 minutes, put the butternut squash into the microwave on high, and then you'll have a lot of an easier time peeling it. So over here we have the butternut squash is peeled and cut and all ready. Okay, and this is, again, this is half of a butternut squash. So you can definitely feel free to double the recipe if you just want to use the whole thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be transferring us over to the stovetop, so that way you'll get a closer look of what's cooking. So let me take this over here. I'm going to move this over. And now you should have a better view of this pot over here. Are you able to see it? If you're not able to see it, just feel free to let me know through the chat. And in this pot, in this pan, I should say, we already have measured out 1 teaspoon of oil. So I'm going to turn this on. Okay. And we're going to give this some time for the oil to heat up. Okay. And while we're waiting for this to heat up, we're going to go over some of the ingredients that we're going to be using. So once that oil is ready, we're going to be putting the butternut squash in and adding in some garlic powder. So this over here is, the recipe calls for a smaller amount, like about 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm going to put in 1/4 just because I like my food to be very flavorful. And to show you the package of garlic powder that I use, this is this. You can use any brand of garlic powder. Okay. So we're going to let those cook together. And some other things that we'll be adding in is 2 tablespoons of water that has been pre-measured, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, 1 can of black beans. So let me show you what the can looks like over here. Here. You could choose the low sodium can, and before I use it in the recipe, I took this can of black beans and I poured it into the colander, and then I let the water to run over it, and I shake it and I rinse it really well. And doing that could help you to reduce the amount of sodium in there by about 40%. So if that's something that you can do, I personally, I love using canned beans because it just saves so much time to, instead of soaking it, and I just have it readily available. Okay. And then we also have over here some oregano that I'm going to be adding in as well. So let's see, this looks like, the oil looks like it's ready. So, oh, and of course the onions. We have over here half of an onion that we're going to be adding in. So we're going to start off with the onions first. I'm pouring this into the pot. Okay. And we'll also be adding in the butternut squash that we have. And the garlic powder. Okay. So you're going to mix that around a little bit. Okay, and we're going to give that a few minutes. I'm going to cover it. Okay, and in the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these ingredients. So earlier we were talking about the black beans, and I mentioned how these are a great source of protein and fiber. Another thing that I'll mention about these black beans is that they have a special phytochemical, which means that it's like a compound that comes from plants. They have this special phytochemical in there. It's called anthocyanins. And this is something that is found in like these dark colored fruits and vegetables, like think of blueberries or blackberries. They have this really great heart healthy type of benefit. So that's something that we get specifically from black beans also. Okay. And let's see what else we have over here. So we also have the red wine vinegar. And vinegar is a great thing to add to recipes because it can give it like a nice sharp flavor without giving it like sugar or sodium. And it's also pretty low in calories. So like a tablespoon of vinegar might have somewhere between 2 to 15 calories. So this is a great way for us to flavor foods without getting a lot of extra calories or sugar or sodium in. So let's check on this. Here, and you're going to want to mix that around. And I'm also going to add in now the water. Okay, as well as the red wine vinegar. All right, and let's give that also a few minutes. Okay. There we go. Another thing that I want to talk about as we're waiting for the butternut squash to cook is the cost of this recipe. So the total cost of this recipe without the oil and the seasonings might come out to about $3.50, which would make each, like if this recipe has 3 servings. So if you just wanted to figure out what the cost of 1 serving of this recipe would be, it would be like about $1.25. So this is really great to think about because, you know, a lot of times we think how healthy eating could be very expensive. And while that is true for some things, it doesn't have to be the case. You know, eating plants is a great way to get nutrients in. You know, these are low cost ingredients that could make a really healthy dish. So that's something we always want to think about, is that, you know, healthy eating could be affordable if we just do a little bit of planning and maybe sometimes put in a little bit more effort. Of course, it could be a lot more convenient to buy the butternut squash peeled and cut up from the grocery store, but that will have an extra cost to it. So once we get the hang of it and learn how to do it, it's a lot more simple than it might seem at first. Okay, are there any questions in the chat so far?
There aren't any questions in the chat currently, but if as we go along, if everyone wants to please go ahead and add questions to the chat, I'll keep track of those questions and pass them along to Bina. So
Okay,
please go ahead and feel free to type in your questions.
Great, thank you. So let's just continue to check on this and mix it around a little bit. Okay. Great. If you, another thing about substitutions is that if you, for some reason, if you don't like black beans, you could really use any other type of bean in this recipe. If you are a vegan, then you may want to consider using soybeans, because soybeans are something we call a complete protein. So they basically give you all of the amino acids that your body needs. And an amino acid is like the smallest unit of a protein. So that's just something to consider if there's any vegans in the audience. And just to show you the oregano leaves that I use, this is the one that I use. You could, of course, use any brand in your grocery store. And this is a great way to also add flavor to the foods we eat. So, people often find it difficult to have foods that are flavorful without salt. Using things such as onions, garlic or garlic powder, dried herbs, these the vinegar, these are great ways to have food that is flavorful without having salt or without using too much salt.
Bina, we have a really good question. Do you want me to share those with you now or wait till the end?
Please. Yeah, please read it now.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so someone asked, can you substitute with other types of winter squash, such as an acorn squash? And I always wonder that too when I'm cooking. So that's a really good question.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely something you can try to do, like to use different types of squash, and they might have different some different nutritional benefits, but there are so many different types of winter squashes, and it's great to experiment and to see how it comes out. A great way to prepare squashes could be roasting them, which is pretty easy. All you need to do is peel the squash, cut it up, maybe drizzle some oil and some herbs and seasonings onto it, and then put it into the oven. And you can also use squashes in soups as well. It comes out pretty good because it has like a relatively firmer type of texture, so it should work well in soups.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's continue to check on how we're doing here. Keep mixing this around. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to mention about the seeds in the butternut squash is that if we cut it open, what you'll notice is that there's also like a stringy type of material that is like mixed with the seeds. So you don't have to worry too much about getting rid of that. If you want to roast the seeds, you can keep that stringy material with it, because once you put it into the oven, it's going to shrivel up anyways. And I do have the seeds to show you what it looks like over here. Okay, so this is from a butternut squash that I peeled and cut yesterday into, and this is what the seeds and the stringy material looks like. So if I was roasting this, I would just take a pan and put like some parchment paper on it, onto like the baking sheet, and then spread this out. And as I mentioned, adding some oil and seasonings, and then putting it into the oven. And this is a really great snack that you can have. So don't throw out the seeds, because it's definitely edible.
Ina, I have a question. What about, and I apologize if you already addressed this, but what about for those who may not feel so confident in their knife skills to actually cut a whole butternut squash? We've all seen in the supermarket cubed butternut squash that was already cubed, or even frozen squash. So what are your thoughts about those?
Yeah.
And how could that modify the recipe?
Yeah, I think those are great options. You know, if you're not like comfortable with cutting into the butternut squash, you could definitely buy it already pre-cut. Whether frozen is also an excellent option. So that could definitely be something that you can purchase, or you can buy the fresh one pre-cut. Just the difference, I would say, is more of like a cost difference. Usually buying it, you know, if it's already pre-cut, might be a little bit more expensive, but you know, if that's what you're more comfortable with, and then that's great thing to you know, consider. And just remember that a lot of these things do take practice. So even if at first, if you're struggling to, like, you know, cut it and peel it, sometimes it's just about finding the right knife or finding the right peeler. You know, one person that I was observing her peel a butternut squash, she mentioned that she was using a Y-shaped peeler, but this is what I have at home, and this is sharp. I did have another peeler that I was really struggling with to peel it, but when I found this worked. So sometimes, you know, experimenting with different utensils in your kitchen could be a good idea.
One other comment that I see in the chat that I just would like to read, because I think it's a great comment in case others aren't able to read the chat.
Sure.
Someone commented that they've seen pictures of baked acorn squashes being used as bowls for soups or fried rice. So you can eat the content, meaning the soup or the rice, but also eat the bowl as well. And I thought that's really interesting. I never would have thought to do that, kind of scoop it out, I guess, and fill it with, you know, you bake it, you scoop it out, you fill it with the contents of your meal, but then you can also eat the actual squash itself. So I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, that sounds really great. I like that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now it looks like we should be ready to add in the black beans. So we're gonna pour that in. And we're gonna mix that around as well. Okay. Okay, and I'm also going to be adding in the oregano. Okay, and then we're going to just give that a little bit more time to cook, so that the you know, that the black beans should be ready. And one thing I did want to mention is that the right time to add in the beans into this dish is when you notice that the butternut squash is tender. So let's say if I were to take a knife and I want to be able to pierce into the butternut squash easily, which I'm able to do if you're able to notice that over here. That way you know that it's tender, and that's when it's ready. You're ready to add in the beans. So we're going to give this a little bit more time to cook as well.
You know, we have another question. So someone asked, and this is also a great question. If someone doesn't like the flavor of oregano, because that's a pretty, you know, it's a pretty unique flavor, what other herbs or spices would you recommend to give this type of butternut squash different flavors? You know, I think to my mind like cumin and other flavors, but if you could elaborate a little bit on other flavorings that could be used for this.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So if you don't like oregano, but if you like other herbs, you may want to try to put in something like cilantro might work well. Or you could also try other types of seasonings. One thing that I've mentioned that I really like to use a lot in my cooking is turmeric. And it gives it the dish a really nice color and a nice flavor. You can try using that, or if you want, you could even just skip the oregano altogether. The butternut squash by itself with the red wine vinegar is already has a lot of flavor in it. So you can even just those on their own should give it like a nice flavor. So you can experiment and see what works best for you and what you enjoy the most. Okay, great. All right, so we can check on that now to see how that is, and we'll check to see if it's ready. Okay. Yes. All right, so this does look just about ready. And the thing that is appealing about this is that, as you can see, the butternut squash has this bright orange color. So, you know, if you are serving it to guests, then it is nice to have it, you know, to cook it before it's being served. You could also have it prepared in advance. And then, you know, if you're serving it on the holidays, and this is how it will look as well once you have the final product. Okay. So at this point, we're just about ready to end the recording. So I want to give credit to our sponsors. This event has been brought to you by the ACL Grant Virtual Smart Living Initiative in partnership with the New York City Department for the Aging. We're going to just have the flyer on display for just a few seconds right now, and then we are going to be ending the recording, and then we'll continue speaking a little bit more once the recording is stopped.